Alright, let's keep rolling on our walkthrough for Phandelver and Below, the Shattered Obelisk. Today we're talking about the Briny Maze from Chapter 8, Beyond a Lightless Star. I'm Dad the Dungeon Master. I've been a DM for over a decade. I'm a published author and I've actually run this campaign multiple times, so I've made every mistake and I'm going to help you guys avoid those. So let's dig into it. So your character should be level 10 at the start of this chapter, and they just unlocked the portal in Lithmyr that leads to the Far Realm. It actually goes directly to the Briny Maze. There's a whole section at the start of this chapter about the things that are happening in Phandalin just in case your party travels back there, and it even gives rules for the tunnels on the way back, the Underdark tunnels, that you only roll half as many times on the random encounters chart, which means you only roll 7 times. So you would still have 3.5 encounters on average. Nobody is going to do that. I've never had a party that's chasing these mind flayers into the Briny Maze. Be like, wait, guys. Let's go check on Phandalin real quick. I'm sure they won't finish the ritual in time. No, everybody goes through the portal. So what I like to do is, whenever the portal opens, at the end of a Lithmyr, it says that they see visions of the mind flayers dragging the captured townspeople through the portal. Well, in my games, whenever they have that vision, I actually also give them visions of what's happening in Phandalin. And what's happening there isn't good. The whole place has gone kind of Silent Hill or upside down. Buildings are twisted in weird ways. Trees and bushes are malformed. Shadows undulate, especially in moonlight. Gwen Orsong has a third double-pupiled eye that's opened on her neck, so she's trying to hide away from people. Rivybittle, he's reading that book that he copied from the ancient tomb, but he swears that it's glorifying chaos and confusion. The 4 people that were already transforming, Wheel of Fortune, Halia Thornton, Ander, and Sister Goreli, they are all locked in rooms in their various houses to keep them from hurting people because they've fully transformed into horrible abominations. And the Stone Hills have closed their inn because they are filled with paranoia. That stuff is all fun and good narrative. It's great because it shows the Far Realm influence, but nobody's ever going to go back to Phandalin to see it. So I just give them visions of those things when the portal opens, just like seeing the other visions. That way the party gets that push of, hey, things are getting bad in Phandalin, we need to hurry, without having to travel all the way back and see it because no one's ever going to do that. Your party can actually gain 2 levels throughout this chapter. One when they find the entrance to the Endless Void, and then another one after they vanquish all 3 of the Mind Flayer fanatics. So they will actually be level 12 when they finally fight the Refraction of Ilvosh. But for this part, for the Briny Maze that we're handling today, they're level 10. The Briny Maze is in the Far Realm. So there is a chance that your party might take a long rest in the Far Realm. And if they do, any character who takes a long rest in the Far Realm has to succeed on a DC 15 Wisdom saving throw or take a point of exhaustion. They still get their long rest. They just have to take a point of exhaustion as part of getting their spells and HP back. So the Briny Maze has certain features. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, they're all made of this pink, spongy, brain-like material. If you damage it, it heals in just a few seconds, and magic cannot affect its construction. It actually pulls creatures into its walls and floor. It actually absorbs their biomaterial and adds it to its construction. So there is no telling how much of the Briny Maze is the original organic material it was made from, and how much is the organic material of creatures that met their grisly fate here. Hopefully that doesn't happen to your party. Everything here is grossly moist. Every wall, floor, ceiling, it's all just moist, just to gross you out even further. Because as you know, the Far Realm is this Lovecraftian, Call of Cthulhu style realm of chaos. The ceilings are 16 feet high, and there's an eerie violet light that permeates the whole area, and all of the map is brightly lit. There are also 3 mind gates spread around the map. And as you can see, the map is shaped like a brain, very clever. Though if you were inside it, it would be confusing. And the book says that many of the adventurers and would-be thieves that have entered the maze get so confused by its weirdly shaped tunnels that they never realize what its shape is. So these mind gates you can see are these 3 gates throughout the map. There are metal rods in certain areas, and I will describe them when we get there. But if you connect the rods, electricity basically runs through whoever's holding each of the rods, and it will activate one or more of these doors to open. And when you link those rods, whether it's one person or if it's a group of people in a chain, everyone in between the 2 rods, when the electricity goes through, has to make a DC 15 Constitution saving throw, and they take it with disadvantage if they have metal armor on, or take 4d10 lightning damage. I'll throw up a little chart of which rods open which mind gates. As with any area in the Far Realm, there really are no cardinal directions, so the compass rose has just been placed on the map to help orient your players. And there are actually some regional benefits to being in certain parts of the Briny Maze associated with which part of the brain you're in. The occipital lobe, which is areas B1 through 5, actually gives your party advantage on perception checks. The temporal lobes, which are areas B6 and B10, give your party auditory enhancements, which are described in each of those rooms. The parietal lobe, which is areas B7 through 9 and 11 through 13, enhances your spatial positioning, and unless you choose to, you can't be knocked prone when you're in these areas. Areas B14 through 22 are the frontal lobe, and this area enhances your spatial awareness, which lets characters use the help action as a bonus action instead. And I think this is really fun and thematic because it actually pertains to the areas of the brain and what they actually are used for in real life. Area B1 is the maze entry, and with a DC 15 perception check, I would say survival. A character can tell that several steps of footprints lead to the left, and that more recently, 3 sets of footsteps lead to the right. This is also where the gateway is. It will stay open for 7 days. It's a DC 18 Arcana check to make it open again after that. And if you fail, nobody can reattempt the check for 24 hours. Area B2 is the Passage of Death. 6 Duergar actually came here. There were 2 that were mages and 4 that were warriors. The 2 that were mages were intent on sacrificing the warriors to Ilvash. Well, the warriors kind of figured that out and they fought it out. And these 4 bodies here are the bodies of the dead warriors. The book kind of messes up. It says that their bodies are riddled with like slashes and cuts and stabs. But if they were the warriors and they were fighting the mages, their bodies should have like burns or frost or explosions because they got killed by magic. Now, Duergar masterminds do have some magic that let them basically mind control people. So they could have made them fight each other. So I guess you could explain it that way. But I prefer having them have like magical damage, because your party's never really going to figure out exactly what happened to these guys, and they're about to run into the 2 mages who became Ashen Wights. So I think it helps explain things a little bit better if you have magic damage being what killed these 4 guys. The bodies also have post-mortem head wounds, which would make you think mind flayers ate their brains, but it's actually an encephalon cluster from later in this dungeon that comes here to gnaw on them from time to time. There is treasure in here. One of the corpses is still wearing a cape of enlargement. So area B3 is the webbed chamber. There are 2 phase spiders in here hanging out in the webs, and there are 2 like shadowy dwarf-sized silhouettes just like staring at the wall. These are the 2 mages. They have been turned into psionic Ashen Wights. The phase spider's webs are too flimsy to impede movement, but they do lightly obscure most of this room, and then the 20 feet on the far right where the heaviest webs are is heavily obscured. Now, the book says that if you don't hurry through this area, or if you're not careful, that the phase spiders will alert the Ashen Wights, but it's not a really wide tunnel, so if you're headed this way, you have to come within like 10 or 15 feet of anybody in this room anyway, so chances are they're going to see the party. The phase spiders can't use their ethereal jaunt in here because of the weird magic, and they will fight to the death. The Ashen Wights, if one is slain, the other one will either flee or surrender. If they surrender and are interrogated, they will start to say stuff about how Ilvash betrayed them, but then will quickly be quiet. This is a really fun roleplay moment because obviously they're a little bit mad, like insane. What I like to do is have him like fall to his knees and like start like mumbling to himself like, "Oh, Ilvash, the evil, vile betrayer, after the gift I offered and you betrayed me, you didn't take my offering, what have you done?" And have him just like frustratedly mumbling and cursing Ilvash to himself, and then have him look up and like he realizes something, and if the characters push more, he'll say something about how Ilvash sees all within the maze, because he believes that Ilvash can see everything that happens in here. I have had an especially compassionate party leave this Ashen Wight behind after he surrendered, and then I used him to kind of screw them over a little bit later on. Most of my parties, especially my main party, they're not really known for mercy, so once they got what they could out of this guy, they ended his story. So area B4 on the other side is the Wall of Hubris. There were 5 mages that came here wanting to steal Ilvash's secrets. When the encephalon cluster from the other side of the map shrugged off their spells, they retreated here. Since then, they have been slowly being absorbed into the walls. The book doesn't say why they stayed here until they started getting sucked into the walls, because it does seem like it doesn't happen that fast. But either way, as they were being absorbed into the walls, they all died. They're all like half absorbed in the walls now. The book gets a little bit overzealous with this room, because if you mess with the corpses or if you get close to them, 5 flame skulls come shooting out of their 5 heads. That is a TPK waiting to happen. If all 5 flame skulls do what they should do and all fireball the party, because that's the strongest thing they have, they should all 5 shoot those fireballs immediately, and most DMs roll groups of enemies initiative together, so they're all 5 going to take their turn together, and if the worst happens and they go first, and they shoot 5 fireballs at your party, even if the party succeeds all 5 saves, that's an average of 70 damage per person. Not every 10th level character even has 70 HP. If that happens, if the Flame Skulls have the highest initiative, it might be a better idea not to have them all shoot those fireballs, even though strategically that's what they would do. And it's a little bit frustrating that the book puts you in this position to pull punches, because I prefer as a DM to set up encounters and then let it play out how it plays out. Like, essentially, it's a strategy game at that point. Like, yes, I set up the encounter so that my party, it depends on what you want. You either set up an encounter so it's easy to make your party feel powerful. You set up an encounter so that it's a tough challenge, but as long as the rolls don't go crazy bad or your party doesn't do anything really stupid, there should be a really, really solid chance of them succeeding. Or you set up encounters that are going to be really tough and that your party should be able to beat if they make the right decisions and as long as the rolls don't go crazy bad. You really never want to set up an encounter where the most likely outcome is that your party all gets killed. I'm not saying they did that with this, but especially since there are a lot of dangerous things in this maze, and this is only one of them, the sheer fact that in the unlikely opportunity that everybody failed their saving throw and all 5 Flame Skulls rolled max damage, that's a max of 240 damage per player, and even on average it's 140 damage. And then if they save, it's 70. That's extremely dangerous for a 10th level party. That would drop some of the party members, especially if they fail the saves. And usually the party members that have lower HP also have lower dex, like your wizards. I don't like pulling punches. I like to set up the encounters, and once we roll initiative, it's a strategy game between the players and my enemies, and whoever wins, wins. Yes, the deck is usually stacked in the player's favor because that's how the game is supposed to work. But if it happened to be that everything went horribly wrong, and the players made horrible decisions, and the dice just rolled horribly today, TPKs should be a possibility. If failing isn't a possibility, you're not playing a game. You're just having fun, fairy tale, make-believe story time with your friends, which if the style of game you want to run is fun, fairy tale, make-believe story time with your friends, that's cool. These are the kinds of things you discuss in session 0. But I think most of the games I run for sure, everybody wants death to be a possibility, because if it's not, you're not winning. You're not succeeding at anything. It's the difference between choosing story mode in a video game and choosing normal mode, or in some cases like Icewind Dale, you're choosing hard mode. But if there's no chance of failure, then there's no reason to feel good about winning. You know what I mean? So I don't like to pull punches. Characters in my games die sometimes, but that makes it feel even better when they succeed. This room is dangerous. Be careful with it. Most likely, some of your players are going to go before some of the Flame Skulls. They're going to be able to attack, spread out, because most players that have got to 10th level have some idea of what Flame Skulls are capable of, and it's not going to go that way. But just know that if it does go the worst way it could go, this room is a possible TPK. And if you don't want that kind of outcome in your game, if that's not the kind of thing that's okay at your table, you need to kind of massage things here, make the Flame Skulls behave less than the most strategic way they could. Area B5 is the Tumor Garden. There are these fleshy nodules that look like stalagmites and a large greatsword that has impaled a creepy tentacly creature to the wall. That creepy tentacly creature is an intellect snare that was hunting around here, and from the spot where it's pinned to the wall, slime is dripping down. What happened was, a Githyanki warrior named Barakta ran into the intellect snare, slew it with her silver greatsword, and even though she didn't want to leave the sword, she fled. This seems weird, but when you run into her later, the book explains that the maze has caused her to be super paranoid. So the way that I explain it, because my party always questions why she left her sword, is when they get to her, I have it obvious that she's paranoid, she was afraid there were more things coming, and she fled. I know it's super shameful for a Gith to leave their sword, but the book also wanted to set up a narrative for when you find them, where you can make a deal by giving them the sword back. So it's a weak narrative point. It makes Barakta look really bad that she left her sword, but I think the value of the roleplay moment you get when you return the sword makes it worth it that this story point is a little weak. So it's a DC 14 Arcana or History check to realize that it's one of the fabled legendary silver swords of a Githyanki. And it's a DC 14 Perception check to realize that the goo didn't come from the intellect snare, it came from the wound in the wall. And the first person who touches the goo, if anybody does, gets visions of the layout of areas 1 through 5. This is only beneficial if you haven't been to the other side, which usually they won't have. Your party will either have gone left or right, so this will at least let them know what's going on the other side of the maze. And because goo has been beneficial in the past throughout this adventure, I usually have at least one character who wants to touch the goo. Some of them drink the goo. Luckily, by the time they touch it, they get the visions, and so most of my parties don't then try to drink it for extra benefits, but it has happened. Area B6 is the right temporal lobe. This room narrows down into a shadowy alcove, and you can hear panpipe music playing, and you see shadows like dancing to the rhythm of the music. What happened is, there's a music virtuoso named Shaly deeper in the maze, and he comes here every couple days, plays his music, and makes the shadows dance. We'll get into more about Shaly when we run into him. It does say that if a member of your party succeeds on a DC 13 performance check, that the shadows that are currently dancing wink out, replaced by shadows that perform to the music that they left here, and it'll stay here for 2d4 days. The problem is, if they fail, the shadows get angry, and 1d4 plus 1 wraiths solidify out of the shadows and attack the party. These wraiths automatically fail any stealth check as they constantly emit this horrible music. So I think this room is super neat, but I don't like it when there are only negatives to a roll. I like it to when, if you have something like this, you can either have a positive or a negative. So what I do is, if they succeed the roll, the music changes and they start dancing, and then a shadowy figure emerges, and I give it the stats of a wraith, and it becomes an ally that follows the person who succeeded on the check around until it dies. It doesn't talk, it just follows and seems to like understand gestures and motions and even what you say to a certain degree, but it doesn't really communicate. It's just an extra bonus little shadowy ally for succeeding on that roll and for trying in the first place. Area B7 is the Githyanki camp. This is where the Githyanki knight Varakta, who lost her sword, is camping out with two Githyanki warriors named Kianka and Vazi. The three of them were on an extended expedition to hunt down mind flayers. The trail that they followed led them here, and then the Briny Maze was much more dangerous than they realized. Their portal back out of the far realm has closed and they don't know why. And they've been staging little expeditions from this spot in hopes of finding a way that they can return with impressive trophies. Varakta was out exploring by herself. She got in the fight with that intellect snare. She unfortunately had to leave her sword behind. There's no greater embarrassment for a Githyanki warrior than being separated from their silver sword. As I said a minute ago, the maze has made her more suspicious and paranoid than usual, so she believes there's more intellect snares lurking around every corner, and that the goo coming out of the wall was super dangerous. Obviously, neither of those things is true. If the party approaches and are obviously carrying her silver sword, they will immediately have their hackles up and be a little bit aggressive towards the party. The two warriors will attack at Varakta's command, but as long as the party offers her sword back and doesn't pick a fight, they'll be friendly as Gith ever are, and they will give the party some information. If they don't, the Githyanki will attack. Varakta will fight to the death, especially if she's trying to get her sword back, but if she falls, the other two Githyanki knights will stop fighting and surrender or flee. This is the first room that has the activation rods. They will tell the party that if you touch the two activation rods, there's a little electrical jolt, and that they open the doors in area B14. They won't mention the damage that it takes, like how painful the shock is, that 4d10 lightning damage. They know that the jolt is strong enough to deal that 4d10 lightning damage, but they do not share that with the party. It doesn't say why, but I'm guessing because they think it's funny. They will mention that a hulking, brain-shaped creature lurks on the other half of the maze, just past some dead Durgar and some spiderwebs. They are talking about the Encephalon cluster. They can explain the layout of the maze in areas 1 through 9, but they are not aware of the creatures lurking in area B3. They actually overheard the musician in area B9 talking about 3 mind flayers who came through recently that were leading a bunch of prisoners. And they will talk about the musician himself, that he sometimes comes around and makes music that stays alive. They do know about him digging a hole, but they do not offer this information to the party because they are hoping that the hole will eventually give them an exit. And they will ask the party if they know the location of any mind flayers they can slay or an escape from this maze. If the party talks about the entrance to a Lithmyr in area B1, Varakta will gather her troops and they will go and attempt to raid a Lithmyr. Even if you guys are on friendly terms, because of the effect of the maze, she remains suspicious of the party and is convinced that they are going to try to betray her at any point. The rods in here open the door in area B14. As I said, they are only 3 feet apart, so any small or larger creature can activate it by themselves. The Githyanki do have treasure in the chest that's in this room, though you would only be able to get it if you fought and defeated them. It has a bunch of teeth from creatures they've slain. It has 4 emeralds worth 900 gold pieces each, a platinum music box worth 1,500 gold pieces that plays music inaudible to dwarves, and a set of 6-pronged silver forks worth 1,800 gold pieces. Area B8 is Shaly's gear. This is where the musician Shaly camps. There's a bedroll and a cask. The cask has pretty mundane ale, but the cask's gold stopper is worth 850 gold pieces. Area B9 is Shaly's digging spot. When you come in here, you will see a slightly transformed aberrant zealot that is digging in this shallow hole, and the edges of the pit are all like black and necrotized like an old scab. This place is disgusting. And and up above him is a wad of flesh and teeth. It's a flesh meld, like that was in the tunnel on the way down here, and it's just hanging above him, not attacking him, as he just digs away at this hole. What's happening is, he's digging this hole. His friend, the flesh meld, which he refers to as Jitterjaws, every time he's able to break a piece loose, Jitterjaws consumes it. So that's the reason why the hole is not healing itself. Jitterjaws was a gift from Ilvosh to Shaly, and he is immune to its aura. Shaly also has a +7 to performance checks. Shaly is digging like crazy with a rusted spade, and he's digging the hole to find and kill the dragon. He's actually correct, there is a dragon in the chamber down below, and in a couple of days he will break through if the party doesn't intervene, and the young amethyst dragon that's down there, and him and Jitterjaws are actually evenly matched, so the winner of that battle will probably be whichever side the party helps. Jitterjaws is loyal to Shaly. He will not attack unless Shaly is in danger. Any attempts to talk to Shaly last only a few minutes, and he's always going to turn back to talking about digging in the hole or about playing his music. If you attempt to get Shaly to stop digging or to play his music, he'll say, "I have Jitterjaws, I don't need you." And if you keep pushing and pushing, eventually he will decide that you were sent here by the dragon to try and stop his digging, and he will shout that you're the dragon that doesn't belong here. Get him, Jitterjaws, and they'll both attack. There is treasure in here. Shaly's ivory panpipes are worth 3,600 gold pieces. Area B10 is the left temporal lobe, and this is a super interesting room. The magical effect of this room lets you understand any spoken or signed language in here. So there was this mage named Claudel Camden who had this book called Truths of the Inward-Facing Mind, but it's esoteric, he couldn't understand it. So he came here to try and read it. When he realized the room didn't help him read, he summoned a spectator named Jomlis to read it for him, hoping that he would then understand what it said because it was being spoken out loud. It didn't work. So over time, he was dedicated to trying to teach Jomlis to pronounce the words slightly differently. So Jomlis reread the same parts of the book over and over again, slightly changing the pronunciation in an attempt to help Claudel understand. It never worked. Claudel eventually died, but Jomlis has not stopped attempting the task. He sits here and reads this book that's on this pedestal every day, all the time. He has never left this room, so he doesn't have any knowledge about the rest of the maze. He just knows there's an encephalon cluster, which hasn't attacked him, which Jomlis believes is because the encephalon cluster assumes he's a beholder. The book says that if the party stays and tries to help Jomlis, that after 24 hours of working together, they will eventually make sense of the book and they will receive a blessing. No party is going to stay here for 24 hours. I don't even know how, as a DM, you would be like, okay, 24 hours pass. No, they're going to be like, whoa, 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 we're not waiting 24 hours. Or are you going to be like, okay, another hour passes. You think you're making some progress. Are you going to stay another hour, 24 times? It doesn't make any sense. No party, especially they're in a rush to stop the ritual. Yes, we know the ritual is very in-depth and may take a while, but as any story and any campaign reaches the end, you're supposed to be stacking tension, making it higher and higher and higher until the final climax, the tension's at the maximum point that the party can handle, or the reader, or whatever, and then whatever happens in the climax, huge success, huge failure, either way, that's when tension's supposed to be at its maximum. Sitting here and waiting for 24 hours, or the way that the book kind of thinks that parties will take long rests and spend days after days on their way to the mind flayers, it's not going to go that way. It shouldn't. You're supposed to be pushing the party forward. There's supposed to be this building tension that if they don't hurry, that the ritual will happen before they can stop it. They're racing against time. That's what increases the tension. So nobody's going to stay for 24 hours. So what I do is I make it an hour. I tell the party if they succeed on a DC 18 Arcana check when examining this book, that they feel like that Jomlis is close, and that if they spent an hour helping him, they would probably gain some pretty significant boon from the knowledge in this book. Most parties will attempt it at that point. And then I make them roll another DC 18, either Arcana or History check at the end of the hour to see if they understand what he's saying. Whoever succeeds receives the blessing from the book. It's the blessing of the solipsistic mind. I'll throw it up there, that way I don't have to go through everything. You can just pause the video and read that if you need to. There is some treasure in here. Jomlis keeps Claudel's belongings in a neatly stacked pile in the corner, among which is a pair of well-made spectacles worth 100 gold pieces, 2 spell scrolls of comprehend languages, and a spell scroll of tongues. It's a DC 16 persuasion check to convince Jomlis to let you take those belongings. Jomlis will not part with Truths of the Inward-Facing Mind willingly, but if you slay him and take the book, or sleight of hand it out of there, it is worth 2,000 gold pieces. Area B11 is the hidden chamber. with a 14 passive perception, or if a character succeeds on a DC 14 perception or investigation check, they notice a little slit in the wall here. But if you learned about this area from Astropask, you actually make this check with advantage. You can easily open the slit by touching it, it opens on its own. In here is a room full of the most adorable creatures. There are 7 flumps just bobbing around in here. There is a tear that they formed in the far side of the room to get in here, and ever since B1 got closed, it's the only entrance from the far realm into the Briny Maze. And the book says that you can include the little pocket areas from the little portals in the Lithmyr in the nearby area of the far realm outside this tear. But what I like to do is something similar to what I did with the aperture in the Grell feeding area, where when they saw out into the chaos of the far realm, it was beyond what their minds could comprehend, and I made my characters roll a wisdom save. But this time, I make that wisdom save at DC 15, not crazy hard, but if they fail, I give them a temporary madness from the DMG. They aren't really that detrimental, it's really mostly a fun, silly thing. And the room is full of bubbles. The flumps actually attached organic nodules to the walls to put out these bubbles. And if a bubble touches a creature, it pops and gives it a numbing sensation. The flumps find this sensation pleasing, and apparently the bubbles, when they hit the tear that they put in the maze, stops Ilvash from knowing that there's a tear. I'm telling you, the far realm is just, it's weird. This room is like a joke. Flumps, they're not harmless, but they're this close to harmless. And the flumps decided that they were going to go on a campaign to fight Ilvash. The book says that even though they are individually weak, as a group they think they're strong enough, but they're not. Despite their situation, the flumps are in good spirits because they found that they cannot be knocked prone in this area, and it is especially dangerous and embarrassing for a flump to be knocked prone, which is just adorable. These things are adorable. Their leader, named Wise Borblish, believes that the Encephalon cluster in the next room is too powerful for them to defeat, and they were hoping that somebody else, maybe the party, would defeat it for them. And this is especially funny because they are supposed to be here to fight Ilvash, but they can't even get past the first enemy they run into and have to enlist the party to help them. If the party were to defeat the Encephalon cluster and come back here, each character with a DC 13 persuasion check can convince 1d4 flumps to follow them. And that can include all 7 flumps if you have enough characters or if you have enough people that roll high enough. And this is hilarious because you're going to be going through this dungeon with these horrifying monsters and you just have these adorable balloons floating along with you. It says that they are not fanatical, and if the characters give them obviously suicidal orders, or if a battle turns against them, that they will flee. I usually, just for the fun of it, just to make it cute and silly, because I think the point of this area is to be a fun, like, offbeat from the rest of this grotesque, horrifying, Lovecraftian terror. And D&D does this really well, and I think the D&D movie expressed this really well. That D&D, a lot of people imagine it as like the Lord of the Rings or a dark like Game of Thrones or Brandon Sanderson book, but it really ends up being like 30% that, 70% your friends being goofballs. So in my experience, every D&D campaign, almost every session ends up having some fun, whimsical, silly moments in it because you're just playing with regular people. And I think it is on brand and enjoyable that they put this counterpoint in here, this fun silliness in the midst of all these dark, grotesque things happening. So just to be funny, the moment that combat breaks out, I have every one of the flumps flee screaming back to their little area. I feel like that is on brand for the nature of what they're going for with this room. They want it to be a comedy room, they want it to be a lighthearted room, and nobody wants to see all 7 of these flumps die in grisly battle with the Beholder or some other horrible abomination. But it's getting late, I have to go to work tomorrow. If I do this entire maze in one video, it's going to be like an hour and a half long, so I'm going to stop there. I will put out the second half of this maze within like a week for you guys that are keeping up, and then I'll do another video where I stitch the two together and cut this part out and it just runs right through. If you've made it this far, throw me a like. If you enjoy my content, want to keep up with this campaign, other campaigns I've done walkthroughs of, DM tips, or any of the videos I like to make, feel free to subscribe. If you enjoy my content, want to support me, help me keep making these videos, I have memberships live on my channel. I have a shop, you can get this shirt, you can get this hat. Go check that stuff out. Shout out to GL, he's my channel's first member. I really appreciate you, man. Here are some other videos I've done that you guys might like. Thanks, guys. God bless you.